Hello and welcome to the Sunday Guardian podcast by Joyeeta Basu. Today I'm going to discuss Bangladesh. We all know what is going on, what has been going on for the last couple of months, actually 2-3 months now, ever since the removal of Hasina as Prime Minister. There is an interim government over there, which is headed by an advisor, so-called advisor called Muhammad Yunus, who is supposedly, it seems to be very close to the US, but under him, it seems complete mayhem has been unleashed on Bangladesh. There is persecution of the minorities at the time of recording. There is persecution of ISKCON monks. One ISKCON monk has been arrested. Several other ISKCON monks have been stopped from coming to India. Every day we are being flooded with videos on X about how Hindu minorities and other minorities as well are being killed. Now, to discuss all this and much more, I have Hindol Sengupta, who is historian and professor of international relations at Jindal Global University, and he is also the founder of Global Order, a foreign policy platform. Now, Hindol has been observing Bangladesh for a long time, and he knows everything that's there to be known. Welcome, Hindol, to this show.
Thank you. This is a topic. Thank you for inviting me to your show, and especially this topic, which is very close to my heart. I'm, of course, a product of a family. Both sides, my father's side and my mother's side, fled from Bangladesh during partition. All their lands were taken away. Essentially, they fled with their lives, so to speak. So Bangladesh is very close to my heart, and I observe it carefully. And of course, as you said, what's happening there is complete chaos. So I'm delighted to be here to talk about it.
Thank you. Now, let's start at the beginning, or August 5, what happened? Would you say, in particular, given that Muhammad Yunus has been brought in, and we know Yunus's deep connection with the US, and this is an unelected man who is embraced by Joe Biden when he goes to the US, last UNGA assembly we saw in September. Would you say what happened in Bangladesh is the handiwork of the US deep state?
In more ways than one, and let me explain. There is a broader framework. Please let's understand that if Sheikh Hasina is to be called authoritarian, there is no government ever in the history of independent Bangladesh that has not been authoritarian.
Including the current one.
Including the current one. Because that society is still, democracy is still sort of spreading in that society. There are a lot of pressure groups. Till recently there was immense poverty. So the firm hand of government has always been part of that society. Please remember Hasina's own father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the man who got freedom. He's like Gandhi plus Nehru, as it were, in Bangladesh. He was murdered, he was assassinated by people who thought he was authoritarian, right? And this has gone on and on in Bangladeshi politics. But please remember, the thing that really pushed Hasina out of power is essentially bad economics, inflation, joblessness, a huge spike in the input costs of materials for the textile industry. What caused all that, Joyeeta? What caused all that, of course, was Western wars, was Ukraine. And India got saved because of the interventions made by the Indian government. Otherwise, India was being pushed in that direction. Bangladesh was pushed into a corner. Bangladesh, which until last year was a miracle economy in our part of the world, in Asia, was pushed to the corner because of these wars. And I wrote, in fact, in the paper you edit in the Sunday Guardian, that Sheikh Hasina had sent a letter to the bosses of the textile industry, which is a sort of part business, part mafia, part, handyman, as it were, of the economy, that you have to increase the wages paid to workers. This had been demanded by a whole bunch of international companies also. These people refused to raise the wages of the workers, and she could see that this will create a problem because people were being crushed because of the inflation, right? So this pushed the masses to a particular level. But very quickly, as you and I both know, those student protests were taken over by the Jamaat. The Jamaat was waiting, organized in the wings, and the Jamaat hates Sheikh Hasina. The Jamaat hates Sheikh Hasina because she actually went after them and went after the people who colluded with the Pakistani army, raped hundreds and thousands of women, butchered hundreds and thousands of women in the genocidal attack made on the Mukti Jodhas, you know, the liberation war that was led by Bongo Bandhu and supported by India. So all this, that genocidal, you know, battle that happened, and all these women, children and men who were killed, Jamaat actually did not support the Bangladeshi community, which is what it was part of. They supported Pakistan.
The Razakars.
The Razakars. You see, this word is common between Bangladesh, Pakistan and India. These were the Razakars who told the Pakistani army where the liberation people were, where the liberation warriors were hidden. They were the ones who sent their gangs to butcher and rape women and kill children. So she went and hung a few of them. You know, she couldn't go after all of them, but few really, worst characters were hung by her. And they hated her. They were determined to kill her.
So what we are witnessing in Bangladesh, basically what we are witnessing is the Razakars are back in power. You know, this is something really surprises me when it comes to the US. And I have talked to some Americans who are in Washington and all, and they say it's very disappointing when it comes to the Biden administration in particular, that they believe, they are under the sway of perhaps front organizations of Muslim Brotherhood and all, and they actually believe that Hasina the Jamaat is a better option, the Razakars are a better option when it comes to Hasina, and they are the ones who will restore democracy. Now, was this move by the US? And yes, we know, whether we believe in deep state or not, but the fact of the matter is that if the US was involved, why did they was their actual intention restoring democracy? Was it about oil? Was it about base? What exactly was it about?
As late as last November, I asked the question when the drumbeats in Washington Post and New York Times began against Sheikh Hasina, suddenly saying she's authoritarian, she's horrible and all of that. I asked the question on Twitter, what is Hasina not giving the US? There's something that she was not giving them. And only a few months later, we understood the answer, right? Look, the fact is, Sheikh Hasina did not get a visa to go to the UK, where her own sister's daughter is a sitting Labour MP, where her own sister is a citizen of the UK. She didn't, of course, get a visa to go to any other Western country, including Finland, where there was some talk that she would go. This cannot happen without America's blessings. We would be foolish to think that this could have happened without America's blessings. There is no way that Sheikh Hasina wouldn't get a visa in any part of the world, in the Western world, without the fact that there was intervention by America. And this, it's very clear, and Sheikh Hasina came out and spoke about it, that the US wanted certain kinds of entry into certain land territories to build particular kinds of military installations and bases, which she wouldn't allow. And this is very dangerous for India because all of this was going to happen very close to the chicken's neck. And Hasina spoke about this Christian territory that was going to be carved out, using some of India's territory, some Bangladeshi territory, and some territory from Burma, from Myanmar, right? Now, we don't know 100% whether she was absolutely correct or not, or accurate or not, but I would not think that this is so implausible. This has been a long game. Sardar Patel warned about this. Sardar Patel, in his last letters to Nehru, said that the interventions that are being made to change demographically religion in the northeast of India will one day lead to geopolitical problems for India. So you have to connect history to current geopolitics, right? This has been going on for a long, long time. And what has happened in Bangladesh, you see, the US never learns. This is what happened in Afghanistan. This is what happened in Pakistan. And now this will happen in Bangladesh. You see, the UNIS let's say the best thing possible about Yunus. Let's say Muhammad Yunus genuinely wants better economics for Bangladesh. Let's grant him that. But he does not run the streets of Bangladesh. He's only a figurehead, right? To talk to certain Western donors, to talk to certain companies and get in the money. The streets, the apparatus of Bangladesh, including sections of the army. Please remember, Sheikh Hasina was attacked and India had to intervene to save her only a few years ago. They wanted to kill her, a section of the Bangladeshi army. So again, that section was influenced by the Razakar Islamists. So this faction runs the streets, runs the apparatus now, and they had been put in control only by Sheikh Hasina. Now they have a free hand. Please remember, what is the first thing Yunus did? He let loose Jashimuddin Rahmani, one of the worst terrorists of Bangladesh. What is happening to the people who were accused of the Holy Bakery attack, one of the worst terror attacks in the history of Bangladesh? They're all back on the streets of Bangladesh. So Yunus has Yunus has absolutely no control on all of this. He's a figurehead. So even if you give him the best case scenario, that he has no control, we are still faced with the fact that Bangladesh slowly is sinking into the sort of Islamist territory that Pakistan has become. The demand has already come, remove Amar Shonar Bangla.
The national anthem.
Tagore's national anthem. Demand has already come, remove the national flag, because the national flag doesn't have the crescent, right? All of this one by one will become, heavy duty demands in Bangladesh, and the Islamist capture will become complete unless something can stop it. And what happens is in India, Indian elites talk to Bangladeshi elites in Dhaka primarily. They all went to the same universities in the West, and they all inhabit what I call elite land, right? So they deny these things, and these people in India think, no, my friend in Dhaka said there's no problem. But your friend in Dhaka is living in a bubble, so the streets are changing, Joyeeta. And India will face the worst scenario, which is our, greatest nightmare, a two-front war. Pakistan definitely, now also on our eastern borders, Manipur onwards, it's all become extremely shaky, and now Bangladesh. And the Bay of Bengal, which was really our backwaters, is today a question mark. We cannot run away from these terrible truths about our geopolitical situation.
Now, when you're talking about the streets of Bangladesh, to what extent would you say the radicalization of Bangladeshi society has happened? Because I was in Bangladesh over 10 years back. I was told even if 10% of the population is radicalized, well, of course, when you're looking at it, that's a huge number of people. So, how widespread is the radicalization to the extent of that the common people over there, even the middle class, I would say, the educated class, I'm not talking about the elites, that everybody is afraid to speak out? It cannot be that it is 80% radicalized or 90% radicalized. To what extent do you think radicalization has happened?
See, among the common, if you take the average Bangladesh,
yes,
for many, many years, even when Sheikh Hasina was in power, if you went to Dhaka, you would hear that incessantly they would have something bad to say about Bharat.
Yeah, India.
They say Bharat, they never say India, right? Or Bharat or Bharat in Bengali.
Bharat, they say.
Yeah. They will have something bad to say about Bharat, including that, if you come to our house for tea, we give so many things to eat. Bharat gale, in Bengali, if we go to Bharat, they only give biscuit and tea. It could be something as silly as that. But it gives you a sense that this anti-India resentment had been fed and injected in that society from top to bottom.
In fact, if I can just intervene, I have heard that it is not just anti-India, that there is an anti-Hindu sentiment as well. Even Bangladeshi Hindus going to Muslim households, one of the dishes will definitely be beef. In spite of knowing that they are not going to, but they will flaunt it. So that is the kind of insensitivity, I would say, I mean, to me, it seems like insensitive. Now, please continue. Sorry for.
No, and obviously there was a dichotomy, right? On one hand, there are instances that you're talking about, right? When Sheikh Hasina was in power, her ministers would point out, look, Dhaka and its outskirts alone has some 100 Durga Pujas, right? And Sheikh Hasina would give some 500 rupees token to every Durga Puja, right? But the point was that these Durga Pujas were being attacked year after year after year. And obviously, if they were far away from Dhaka, that noise wouldn't reach, tyranny of distance. But in Dhaka, they would maintain a certain particular kind of public bonhomie. And remember, this is a country where your own capital is named after a temple. Dhaka is named after the Dhakeshwari temple. We heard, in the Ramakrishna Mission, that the Ramakrishna Mission was being threatened and had to be guarded by commandos of the Bangladeshi army a good 10 years ago. So this has been a problem for a long time. I wrote in my latest essay, again in your newspaper, that there's this law that the Bangladeshi establishment would use against Hindus. It was called the Enemy Property Act, which was used to take over all the properties of Hindus. In 2011, they tried to balance it out by saying, no, we will try to give something back. But there has been a sustained effort to eliminate Hindus. Again, Abul Barakat, the Dhaka University professor, famously wrote that if this goes on, and he wrote 10 years ago, if you look at 20, 30 years later, there will be no Hindus left. But the thing is, Joyeeta, there is still, even if it's a few percentage points of Hindus left in Bangladesh, out of a 200 million population, it's a significant number of people. Those people can actually really fight back. But you see, they have been taught to be timid for 75 years. They really have to, have their backs against the wall to fight back. And this will happen. See, this is the interesting thing. People always feel that, Jamaat will take over and these Islamists will take over and they'll kill everybody. It doesn't work like that. It's a slow process of elimination. It's like slow poison. Step by step, household by household, neighborhood by neighborhood, Hindus will be eliminated. And this has been going on for a long time. Think about it otherwise, If you say this, Bangladeshi will say, look at what's happening in India, this, that and the other. I have a fundamental thing to ask you, right? If minorities were being treated so badly in India, that you are comparing it to Bangladesh or Pakistan, how is it that in Pakistan, Hindu minority numbers dramatically collapsed? Bangladesh steadily collapsed, but in India, minority populations have increased. Think about it. If people are being treated so badly, how are the numbers increasing in one place and decreasing in the other? Then they should decrease here also, right? When you ask this question, there is no answer. So there is a deep-seated subcontinental hypocrisy in all of this, which we are being forced to face. Today, Mamata Bandyopadhyay is saying, get the UN peacekeepers. Today, the elite in Kolkata, including in hospitals, are saying, we will not treat Bangladeshis. You are the ones who've been beating this dhol that Epar Bangla, we'll all come together. Today you're realizing, no, Opar Bangla doesn't really want us. Right? So these are all the buried demons of subcontinental politics. And we are getting a very ugly reality check. This will get much worse. This will get much worse because now in Bangladesh, including the BNP, have started to suspect that with certain foreign intervention, Yunus is in no hurry to go away. So this will get far messier. The interim government, first they were saying 4 months, then they said 6 months. Now it's not even very clear when. Now they're saying when the structural fixes will happen, then elections will be called. So when is that structural fix going to happen? We don't know. So including the BNP now has begun to suspect that something is going wrong somewhere, right? So this will get far messier and we will really have a problem in our hands. I have one last thing to say in this, before you ask me the next question. Also remember the structural part of it. Because of climate change, the waters are rising. Bangladesh is going to be one of the worst areas of the world which will be faced with this ocean rising problem. In about 20 to 30 years, up to 2 to 3% or up to 5% of Bangladeshi lowland may be submerged, which means 5 to 10 million people will be displaced. Where are they going to go, Joyeeta? They are going to come towards the Indian border. And no country in the world can tell their army, start shooting if thousands of people come to your border. It is not possible. I feel that we in India don't even understand what is coming. We have no conception of what is coming. This is the truth. This is only 20, 30 years. This will happen in your lifetime and mine. This is not in some distant future. Then okay, fine. In typical subcontinental thinking is, this we laugh about this, that public policy is always made at a point that I'm going to be dead. So all forecasts are I'm going to be dead. This is not like that. This is going to happen in our lifetime and we are not prepared for it.
Yeah, but before we go into this topic in much greater detail, I've got a question. I had gone to Dhaka during the height of the Shahbag movement.
Yes.
It was a students' movement, and against these Razakars, against these, I would say, these radical fundamentalists who were going around chopping hands of the bloggers and all. And this was Dhaka University.
Yes.
The Shahbag Square was right next to Dhaka University, and all these things were taking place. The students were so energized. So I saw a very different kind of a student profile, or what they believed in, and they were actually against radicalization and
Yes.
fundamentalism. How is it that in the last 10 years, the students coming out of the Dhaka University, the students in Dhaka University have gone totally the Jamaat's way? I mean, this is something very surprising. How did this happen?
So here's what actually happened. Those students who want a secular Bangladesh, love Bengali music, sing Rabindra Sangeet, they are still there. But this is about statistics, Joy. Statistically, they are an insignificant number of people. And what has happened is, over time, Jamaat's organization has become much, much, much stronger. When you went to the Shahbag protests, Jamaat did not have, the Islamists did not have, especially because Hasina was at the peak of her power, they did not have that kind of organizational power to face off the state on the streets of Dhaka. They would do other mischief in other parts of, in Chittagong and Rajshahi and so on and so forth. But Dhaka was firmly controlled by the state, right? What has happened over 10 years is the Jamaat and the Islamists have infiltrated every part of Bangladeshi society, including the universities. Even many of the student protesters, you will see, many of their statements are a bit funny. You can see that they have multiple influences that they're trying to grapple with. And even if they're hardcore secular, they don't have the organizational power. All their organizations are infiltrated by the Jamaat. So tomorrow, if you have to get 5,000 people on the streets of Dhaka, the only people who can do it are the Islamists. So it's a fundamental street power, right? Again, there's a parallel to Kolkata, by the way. You see, today in Kolkata, if you have to get 10,000 people on the streets of Kolkata and in Maidan and so on and so forth, where are you going to get those people from? The Bengali middle classes are not coming out of their homes and going to Maidan. In fact, the RG case was one small incident where some people at least came out. Usually what happens is, from the Parganas, you gather up a lot of this Islamist, people who have come from the other side, this, that and the other, and you gather them on the streets of Kolkata. This is exactly what happens in Dhaka. So this is a big problem, and Sheikh Hasina was very cognizant of the problem. That's why, please remember, Sheikh Hasina, who fought against Islamism all her life, was forced to reach an accommodation with one of the most radical groups, the Hifazat-e-Islam. And that Hifazat is today in the interim government. So, even Hasina was trying to grapple with these things. And things were turning against her. The final push was this inflation problem, right? And she couldn't control it anymore. But mark my words, we have not seen the end of the Awami League or of Sheikh Hasina. This story, as they say in Hindi, kahani abhi baki hai. There is more to this story that is going to come. But before all of that happens, we in India will have a lot of problems from Bangladesh.
To start with, I'm certain ISKCON is one of the problems. Why are they so angry with ISKCON?
ISKCON, yeah. This is a very good question. I'm so glad you asked this. Most people don't ask this question. You have to ask the question, why ISKCON? Ramakrishna Mission is also there. All these Shakta traditions, Durga Puja, this, that, whatever, all these temples, Kali Mandir, everything is there. Why this targeted approach towards ISKCON? Because ISKCON by its very nature has been a congregational organization, in the sense that they want you to join their fold. Whereas Ramakrishna Mission and other organizations, like, you do whatever you feel like, you come sometimes to us, it's fine. We'll give you some words of wisdom, be happy. Whereas taking an initiation into the faith is taken very seriously by the Vaishnavites. Not just ISKCON. ISKCON is just an example of the broader Vaishnavite tradition in Bengal. The Vaishnavites take this initiation part very, very seriously. And because ISKCON naturally has, it's colorful, there's a lot of singing and dancing, there's good food, it's a moderate message. A lot of people were beginning to join ISKCON in Dhaka. There is no way Islamists would allow this in any part of the world. No chance. So the moment that started happening, it became a direct threat on the streets. And also remember, from the time of Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON's great outreach success has been with young people. A lot of talented young people join ISKCON, right? So therefore, this getting the young people, direct challenge to Islamists in Bangladesh.
But given that fact that, there are so many Westerners in ISKCON, aren't they also, think of it, Tulsi Gabbard is part of the ISKCON.
That's right.
So, and she's going to be DNI, Director of National Intelligence.
Yes.
How does it help? Don't they have that much common sense that you do not target an organization that has so many Westerners and with such strong, I would say even Gerald Ford's grandson or someone was part of ISKCON or perhaps is still part of ISKCON?
Yeah. No, absolutely. They don't. You see, what has happened is, again, we have to go back and ask, who are these Islamists in Bangladesh? You see, as the Middle East changes, the worst elements from the Middle East are landing up in South Asia, right? These are the worst dredges of Islamism. And they are obviously, in a sense, fueled by, vested interests from the West with money and so on and so forth, including from certain pockets of the Middle East also. So they obviously don't think of these things. But they are, I'm glad you mentioned this. Some of these people are in for a very rude shock when Trump comes to power. Because it will be a very different ball game. You see, the Biden administration in many ways, including in the UK and so on and so forth, had reached some sort of a strange tacit understanding with certain vested interests among Islamists. It's almost like it's okay if you take your, ghastly ideology and do it somewhere else in the world. Don't disturb us. We'll give you money. Also, as has been the history of America, Islamism has been instrumentalized as state policy.
Yes.
And weaponized in certain parts of the world. Today, think about it. After the trillions of dollars that America poured in Afghanistan, we are back to a situation where the Taliban is openly saying, no matter what you do, we will not let girls study. And the whole of Western feminist sphere, so to speak, is silent.
Absolutely.
Look at the irony and the tragedy of it all. I was looking at that video where for the first time, some people are, talking about Hindus being murdered and assaulted in Bangladesh in the British Parliament. The entire Parliament is empty. There are hardly one or two people. It is only because everything goes on record we are being able to see the video. No one's there. So these societies, and especially left-leaning governments in these societies, are creating these deadly tacit understandings with Islamism. So no good will come out of this. No good can come out of this. In America, one of the things that really propelled Trump to power, it was not the main reason, but certainly it was a factor, is the kind of stuff that people like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and all these people had done. The American public saw through it. And they were like, we don't want this kind of stuff in our country.
So do you think situation Bangladesh is going to be in trouble now that Trump is president?
So I think maybe there will be some impact as far as attacks on Hindus are concerned. But remember that the American geostrategic interest in Bay of Bengal and keeping a firm hold in the broader, what we call the Northeast, is very strong. Because some parts of the American establishment have come to the conclusion that China is going deeper and deeper into this area. So they want a foothold there. Now the ideal thing and the most obvious thing to do would be to let India take care of it.
Exactly.
Support India in fighting this. India is already fighting this across its northern borders. Let India fighting this. But the Americans always, they will take their chances where they can. But all of it adds up to a bad situation for India. See, the Americans, the thing about America is that it doesn't touch them, right? I mean, they are thousands of kilometers away. Our eastern border is going to go through a lot of problems. And this will only get worse. Already you can see what's happening in Manipur. The divide is becoming stronger and stronger. In Bangladesh, there are people, including professors, who are openly saying that Bangladesh should once again start supporting Assamese rebels and, Assamese terrorists. So if they re-trigger that whole Ulfa thing, the entire Northeast will go up in flames. Actually, we are very lucky. I have to say, I have great faith that there's Himanta Biswa Sarma in Assam, who's very strong and has a real hold on the ground. So, there will be some fight back. But this is going to be trouble. And you see, this is not for a state government to solve. You'll appreciate that, right? This is deep-seated geostrategic matters. This is for a central government to tackle. So, we all have to be cognizant, including in the media and academia, that our eastern border is now deeply in peril and will only progressively become more and more imperiled as the days and months go by in this so-called interim government in Bangladesh.
Now, this is something interesting because when you are looking at Sheikh Hasina's removal and whatever has happened, at one level, Chinese interests and US interests converged.
Of course.
And that is the biggest irony of it, isn't it?
So there is at least one theory in certain pockets of the people who study the deep state, that the Biden administration, or at least the Democrats, in a sense, have reconciled to a G2 world, which means that they are overtly or covertly willing to come to some kind of compromise with China, which means that Asia will be left to China. Now, all of this may change now with Trump, but remember, and this is very important for us to remember, all the people who are excited about Trump in India, Trump is only 4 years.
Exactly.
Right? You're assuming that after that there'll be J.D. Vance and so on and so forth. There's no guarantee to that at all. There is an establishment which is more powerful than any president. Now, they are saying they will, create a new establishment. It's not so easy. So we have to be very careful that, in a sense, our interests aligned with America, but how much leeway America is willing to give to China as Chinese technological leaps become bigger and bigger in critical minerals, in batteries, in EVs, as Chinese prowess becomes higher and higher, as China comes closer and closer to be becoming absolutely independent as far as defense manufacturing is concerned, the impetus, especially among the left-leaning sort of intelligentsia in America, will be to strike some sort of deal with China, which means India will be left to its own devices. We should be very clear about this. And when Jaishankar says that India should only be on one side, which is its own, he's a very clever man. He gets it. He understands that how the ball is rolling. So this is all going to get more and more tricky. India must push deeper and deeper into defense indigenization. That's our only hope. You know, we think about buying weapons from Europe. Look at the condition of Europe. You know, the French government is about to fall.
Yes.
Germany is in peril. Look at the state of Europe. So we have to really defend our sovereignty and our borders. You know, we are actually very lucky that we have a hardcore nationalist government, you know, which puts sovereignty first. You can have political debates. See, my point is you can have infinite political debates and parties will not like each other. But sovereignty is sovereignty. Right? So our eastern border is in real peril, and the peril that is coming in the next 10 years or so will truly create a problem for India.
Now here, perhaps it's going to be the last question. Of course, right now it seems there is no escaping Yunus, and he's going to stay.
Yeah.
I mean, again,
Yeah.
if the protests happen, they will have to come from within Bangladesh
Correct.
against removing
Correct.
Yunus. You know, this is something, being a Bengali, and you also are a Bengali. We
course.
know how it works, especially in Bengal, in
Yeah.
Calcutta. There is this one section of people who will go around saying, oh my God, they are such better Bengalis, the Bangladeshis, because they have preserved the language. Okay, and this is something we keep on hearing. Anything you say about against Bangladesh, they will say, my God, they are the paragons of quote unquote, if virtue could be used for such a word. But as you also have written in the Sunday Guardian, that here it's a classic case of how, I mean, religion, when it came to identity,
Yes.
linguistic identity, something that Bangladeshis fought for,
Exactly.
was totally sacrificed at the altar of religious, I would say the worst kind of, I mean, religious radicalization that can take place.
Absolutely.
If you can just elaborate on it.
Absolutely. See, this is one of the subcontinent's great illusions, as I've called it in my essay in the Sunday Guardian. You see, after partition really taught all of us in the subcontinent a very hard lesson about how, despite fighting colonialism, all of that, how religion is so vital a force and could be a terrible negative force, you know, 1 million people dead. In a sense, Bangladesh's war of liberation was a ray of hope. Here was a clear instance that a highly impoverished people, when given a choice, did not say we want to be with Pakistan just because we are Muslims. There was a hugely strong Bengali identity led by the Bangla language. Their rejection of Urdu was the beginning of their rejection of Pakistan. Right? So this was a moment of great happiness in the subcontinent, that at least in a sense, some of the demons, some of the clouds of partition had been mitigated by this instance. But you see, Bangabandhu's assassination should have taught us that that genie cannot be put so easily in the bottle. And certainly Sheikh Hasina knew, because you know there had been assassination attempts on her too, that this genie was spreading poison across Bangladesh. That's why she took that very strong stance of hanging some of the worst offenders among the Jamaat. But even then she couldn't restrain it. You see, she couldn't restrain it also because of material forces. You know, I really want to emphasize. You have to ask the question, if these people have spread like poison in Bangladeshi society, where are they getting the material means to spread like this? The material means are coming from outside Bangladesh. In fact, I would argue that Hasina didn't have the kind of material means to fight this compared to the kind of petrodollars and others that was flooding into Bangladesh. So therefore, these guys have received a lot of money from all kinds of, you know, hardline sections from around the world, including the Middle East and of course in the UK and so on and so forth.
So it's basically, if you are looking at it at one level, it is not just about Bangladesh, it's actually against India.
Absolutely. Bangladesh is a tool.
Yeah.
Look, Bangladesh is so impoverished. You know, you were talking about all this, you know, this idea that some Bangladeshi academics say, oh, you know, we will join Pakistan and clear nuclear weapons, we will do this, we will do that. You know, they have no manufacturing.
Yeah.
They barely have much agriculture. large part of what Bangladesh eats and drinks every day comes from India. Forget electricity, forget the cars, forget the refrigerators, forget everything else. Basic food comes from India. So they are still at a very perilous state, right? So there is a long way for Bangladesh to go, right, until it stabilizes. Think about it. You mentioned, offering beef, right?
Yes.
Where does beef come from in Bangladesh? Do the Bangladeshis grow that cattle? Of course not. One of the problems, that's why it's all targeted towards India. One of the problems of this cattle violence in India is because of the amount of smuggling that happens of cattle from India to Bangladesh.
Yeah, through Bengal.
And when farmers protest in India, there's a clash and then all this violence happens. But see how interesting that we never talk about that part. And this illicit trade is worth billions of dollars. We never talk about that part. So this is, we are going to be far more badly affected than Bangladesh. We should not make the mistake of thinking that this will be a Bangladeshi contained problem. This won't remain contained. I will not be surprised, and I'm going to say this on your show, and later we will see if I'm right or wrong. If the Jamaat and the Hifazat really take charge in Bangladesh, I would not be surprised if they do to Bengal and other parts of eastern India what Pakistan does in Kashmir. I would not be surprised at all.
That's scary.
It is. It is extremely scary. And see, I'm not even making this up. There are academics in Bangladesh who are saying this. There are academics in Bangladesh who are saying that, we will disrupt Odisha, we will disrupt Bihar, we will disrupt Assam.
Well, in the short term, what is the immediate solution?
The immediate solution is very, very simple. India cannot and absolutely should not take any soft stance towards Bangladesh. It's very clear. You do whatever you do against us, there are repercussions. America is thousands of kilometers away from you, so is China. You are in our neighborhood and you are in our backyard, so to speak. All your food stuff, everything goes from us.
Yes.
You do things against our sovereignty, there will be repercussions. And those repercussions we will be absolutely determined about. See, the only reason this Chinmay Prabhu hasn't been lynched yet is because the MEA put out a statement. I have no doubts. He would have been lynched immediately. The only reason he hasn't been lynched yet is because one is, of course, he's from ISKCON originally, and the other reason is that India made a strong protest.
Simply, let's put it this way. I'm going to sound a little, strong about this. Stop the trucks from going into Bangladesh. Stop whatever power supplies we are still supplying. Stop the export of, we are providing them with textiles and all. The reason why your textile industry, your garment industry has been, stop everything and let them suffer the consequences.
And India will be forced to do something like this. You see, because at the end of the day, look at what's happening in Kolkata, right? For the first time in my living memory, actually doctors in Kolkata are saying, we will not treat Bangladeshis.
Exactly.
A very large number of Bangladeshis come to India for treatment. If doctors began to stop this, you'll remember right after all the abuse of India, there were hundreds of Bangladeshis thronging to the Indian embassy saying, give us visa. Because their livelihood, their entire, medical needs, everything comes from India.
Absolutely.
So if India strongly stops this, if India even says we will stop giving visas, there will be a big problem and the Bangladeshis know it. So they shouldn't push the barometer.
So they should not fly too high, frankly. Because you see what is happening, the public opinion has turned very strongly against Bangladesh, even in Bengal.
I agree, completely. And in my lifetime, I've never seen this.
Yes. It's very, very harsh now. People who are so supportive about Bangladesh, about the language and all, they have all gone quiet.
Exactly.
So, Bangladesh has lost friends rapidly
Quite right.
And frankly, if they continue on this perilous path, as Hindol said, nobody is going to come and save them once India takes action. We will see the consequences later, but our action is not going to be military, of course, but there are other means of doing it. Thank you, Hindol, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, for watching. Until the next time.